Yo, hope you're doing well. We're out here in Colorado and I'm gonna be walking you through my custom-built YT Capra MX. In the past, I've always ridden this bike in the 29-inch configuration. So given that this is the mixed wheel with the 27.5 rear and the 29 front, it's taken a bit of getting used to, but I'm really enjoying it so far. Another change I've been experiencing with this frame is that this is a size large, and in the past I've ridden a size medium. I recently produced an entire video discussing frame sizes, which will be linked in the description if you'd like to hear my thoughts on this. Moving on to the fork, we've got the Z1 Air from Marzo in the white colorway. I am so ecstatic that they've brought back the white forks. When I was a kid, I had a Fox 32 dirt jump fork that was white that I was always super fond of. So to have this fork, I'm just absolutely loving it. My settings will be up on the screen right now. However, I'd like to discuss my volume spacer setup. Traditionally, I run between 4 and 5 volume spacers, as I tend to like to pop jumps, pull for some silly gaps, and 4 or 5 volume spacers works really well for that. However, given that this bike's the size large, it works really well in technical terrain and just absolute chunder. So that's what I've been riding. So now I'm down to 2 volume spacers in the fork, as that tends to work better in that style of terrain. And yeah, the fork's working really well. I'm super stoked on it. Moving on to the rear shock, we've got the Bomber Air from Marzo. On past Capras that I've had the Bomber CR coil shock, and I've also ran this shock in the past. Between the two, I found the Air to work really well for me, and I'll stick with this moving forward. One cool little thing that I've been experimenting with my rear shock is actually my bushings. In the past, I've just ridden the traditional Teflon bushings that you can get from Fox, and I still have that on my rear mount. However, I have now switched to a metal front bushing, and I found that to work really well. In the past, if I would pull for a gap or case something sort of gnarly, I would develop a lot of play in the Teflon bushings, and with the metal bushing, that problem is now gone. My settings for this will be up on the screen right now, and like the fork, we'll discuss the volume spacers. At the moment, I have an extreme test going on, and I have no volume spacers in this shock. In the past, I've ran max volume spacers, mid, kind of all over the place. This frame is more progressive than the 29er, so I don't have as good of a feel for kind of how the kinematic is working. And yeah, we're running no volume spacer right now. It's working well, I guess a little surprisingly, but it's a fun experiment. I'm gonna toss a new volume spacer in here in the next kind of couple of days. I brought a wide range of them with me, but for now, the no volume spacer is working out. For wheels on this bike, we're running the Next R36 carbon wheel set from RaceFace. I've been running these on a few of my other bikes throughout this season so far, and I've been having a really positive experience. With that said, I have some of those new aluminum turbine wheels on my Izzo, which I just filmed a video project on, and I've had a very positive experience with that wheel set. In the past, I've always gone for carbon wheels on 29ers, given the added lateral stiffness. But that turbine wheel set, it really started to change my mind a little bit. So I'm excited to test them out on a longer travel bike and give them a proper thrashing in the future. For tires, we've got a Maxxis DHR2 in the rear with an Assegai up front, both DH casing. I've been dropping tire pressure a little bit. We're going about 27, 28 rear and about 25, 26 front. In the past, I've done 27 front with 31 rear, but the lower pressure has been treating me well so far. So maybe we'll keep dropping it a little bit until I run into problems. But for now, 26 and the 28, it's working well. Moving on to the drivetrain, we've got a full XTR build on this bike. I'm really excited about that. I've been riding for Shimano for a few years now, and this is the first bike that I've been graciously given a full XTR setup for. And I'm running the 10-45 cassette, which is my typical standard. Short cage derailleur, shorter chain, keeps everything tidy and nice. 165 mil crank. So carrying on from the XTR drivetrain, we're gonna head over to the brakes. These are the XTR 4-piston brakes with a 200mm rotor in the front and a 180mm rotor in the rear. In addition to these brakes being new to me, so are these rotors. They're the Frezza rotors. They have a cool finned out design on them, which is intended to help keep them cool. So that's awesome. I'm pretty nerdy, so the little details psych me out like that. All in all, I've had a really positive experience on the XT brakes in the past. I've ridden them on so many bikes, downhill bikes even, but something about looking down at the XTR levers is just very pleasant. I'd say the stopping power is about the same. However, I do enjoy the lever construction on this brake a little bit more. Now, going on to the cockpit, we've got the 40 mil Turbine stem. I run that stem on most of my bikes. It's great, does the trick. However, my handlebar setup's a little different on this bike. I was actually running a Atlas handlebar on this, which is not intended to be cut narrower than 780. And I run 760 mil handlebars. So cutting that thing down, it was a little stiff. So talked to the guys at RaceFace and they're like, hey, let's get you on the Turbine R handlebar. And yeah, so far I cut this thing down to 760, which it is intended for. It's a little flexier. It's been feeling super great. I actually really enjoy the graphics on this handlebar as well and just how it makes the cockpit look. It's 760 mil wide, as I mentioned, and 35 mil in rise. So it's a great handlebar. I'm super stoked on it. Likely gonna be testing it out on a few of my other bikes moving forward. So to wrap things up, we've got a 175 mil dropper post. This is the Fox Transfer. Given that this is the size large frame, it slams very easily, which it doesn't in the size medium frame. And I'm actually gonna look into getting a 200 mil dropper just to see if that would slam as well, because that would be a nice little added treat to have on this bike. My kind of theory with dropper posts is I want it to be able to drop enough for my traditional trail rides and also go high enough to where it's comfortable. But when I'm filming on my trail bikes and riding them more, I should be riding a downhill bike. I really need them to slam all the way. So that's kind of the main thing I look for. Mounted up to that dropper post, we have a Tidal MS1 seat. Just got the YT bottle cage on there. We have the Saint pedals. I was running the XTR pedals on this bike previously when I was using it at home as more of a trail bike. However, given that I'm riding this bike in more of a gravity focused application, the Saint pedals, in my experience, make you feel a little more locked in there and a little bit more confidence. So that's super great. Going into a few little details, one thing I did while I was building this bike that I'm really excited about is I actually put electrical shrink wrap where all of the cables enter and exit the frame to reduce rattling. That was a bit of a time consuming activity, but I'm really happy with it. I just used a cheap Harbor Freight heat gun on the lowest setting to not damage anything, and it worked really well. Some of them don't look super pretty. They're kind of wearing just from rubbing, but you know, it's kept the noise down on the bike and I'm really excited that I did it. Overall, I've been loving this bike so far. It's a bit of an experiment for me, you know, new frame size, mixed wheel, new volume spacer setup on the suspension, a few other little things going on. And I just really love tinkering, and thus I've been loving this bike. I've been putting it through its paces here at the bike park, really thrashing it, maybe a little harder than I should be, but it's been absolutely killing it. I've been loving it, and I just can't wait to keep riding it. So I hope you learned a thing or two from this video. And yeah, if you have any questions, drop them down below. I will definitely get back to you, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.